County Police Department hearing. The chief is going to give an overview first, and then it will be followed by any questions that anybody want to ask. Chief, can you hear us? Can anybody else hear me?
I can.
Okay. I don't see Chief Buckner. Is he in? Or Chief Cecil, you're going to do that?
Nope, he was, Counselor, he was here a second ago. I think he just got knocked off, but let me just check. He's going to do the opening.
Okay.
His image is on too.
What's that, Councilor Bay?
His image is on, so he may not be, may not have sound, but his image is definitely there.
Oh, I see him. See him now. Chief Buckner. I don't think you can hear us. Chief Buckner, can you hear us? Chief Buckner? Yeah, I don't think you could.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I made a statement earlier that you're going to give an overview and then questions will follow.
Yes, sir.
All right, take it away.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilman Majoke, for seeing us today, and to the rest of the council folks who are represented here. Just wanted to start by, saying that I certainly feel like that the management of our budget continues to improve. We still do have a significant opportunity for improve, as it is with any organization of our size. One of the things that is the strongest right now that is really helping us is the accountability at the management levels, specifically for the captains and above. They're doing a great job. And last year we put it in place to where they had their own individual budgets for their divisions, and that's certainly been helping us. Secondly, the other piece of that is really, helping us get our house in order as it relates to managing our budget is centralizing and following the lead of City Hall. Tim Rudd has done a great job of being patient with us and also getting us in line with what they're trying to do centrally from City Hall, to include at some point, we hope by the end of this year, that our budget office will be centralized out of the City Hall budget office, and we will work through that location for the police budget office. I'll start with the current budget that we're in, finishing up in 21, just a quick snapshot. After the contingency, we were at $43,200,000. We have encumbrances currently right now at just shy of $2.4 million. We've spent $31,898,000 of that budget remaining in there. We have $8,956,000. We're projected through the June the 30th to spend another $7.8 million. So we should have be under our original budget, but we will see how that goes. We certainly have a number of different details that we're having to do now with some of the things that are going on in our community, but I'm happy with the progress. As it relates to the overtime, which is always a big topic in the police budget, at our contingency budget was $4.8 million. As of March the 31st of this year, we had spent 3.4. We're projecting to spend $4.2 million. For the current budget that we have for our presentation for the day, FY22, we basically have a flat budget, which is with the being $47,916,893. This budget has $6.5 million of overtime in it, which will allow us, and that's back to our pre-COVID number for the 6.5 million. It allows us to be able to address the quality of life issues that we certainly receive a number of complaints about, and many of those complaints come through you all, and to continue to hold the line with the continued shortage of staffing that we have, and that number just continues to fall almost weekly. We see a decline in that. quick snapshot of the crime. You know, that's our #1 report card on how we are gauged as an organization. Currently, the crime is overall 19% down, including violent crime and property crime. We are up for violent crime for the year, 14%, and we are down 27% for property crime. Last year, we finished at 6% overall down in crime. We were up 6% in violent crime and down 10% in property crime. And that's just as a ratio, 80% of the crime in the city of Syracuse is property crime. The other 20% is violent crime, which makes most of our media headlines. Vacancies. Currently, we have 375 sworn police officers today. We have 136 non-sworn members. That gives us 35 vacancies from the sworn officers. There are 25 non-sworn individuals. For this budget, we will be funded for 423 sworn police officers and 173 non-sworn. 55 of those non-sworn, that number may sound high to some of you, but you should know that 55 of the non-sworn number are actually crossing guards that work for the police department. At our peak during Mayor Walsh's administration, we were at 425 to 430 officers when we were able to hire at the pace that the mayor wanted, which was certainly disrupted by the pandemic. So a couple of other things about as far as staffing is concerned. Over the past 8 years, to give you a little bit of a larger window, over the past 8 years, we've had 227 officers that have retired. During that same period, we have hired 143 officers, which is a loss of 84 officers if you look at that number over an 8-year period. One of the things that we committed to try to address some of that is converting some of our sworn officers where we did not believe that a badge and gun was required to do the job and a civilian could adequately do that job. There were 21 positions that we identified and agreed with the PBA. To date, 11 of them have already been converted. There are 10 more remaining, and most of those will be done through attrition because that was the agreement with the union that we would not just move individuals out. It would only be once there's the vacancy in-house. For the budget year of 21, we've had 31 retirements. We've had 9 resignations. Of those resignations, 5 of them were recruits in the academy. The other 4 were sworn officers. If you want to know kind of what that looks like, I'm told that we may, see an officer once every a year or once every couple of years or so to see a resignation. So to have the 4 sworn is not uncommon for the recruit class because we're attrition out about 10%. But certainly to have 4 officers on the resignation side to leave in this very short period is unprecedented for us. To give you the demographics of the agency, which is another hot button item in our community, for the 375, 84% of those are male, 15% are female, 8.2% are Black, 90% are white. We have 1%, just a little over 1% that are Native American, and then 2%, which is included in the Black and white, that are Hispanic. So that if you want to know what those numbers equate to, as far as the race is concerned, there are 31 African Americans on the police department, 337 white officers, 2 Asian, 4 Native American, and there are 9 Hispanics. For the non-sworn, of that 136, 47% are male, 52% are female, 42% of our non-sworn are African American, 53% are white, 0 Asian percent, 2.2% of Native American, and then in the Hispanic, there is another 2%. So we've had a little bit of success with increasing, which is the Black and brown numbers that we're often asked about. So we've had some success there, but we're certainly not where we would want to be. I will tell you that we are in the process of vetting a group of candidates that will be hired in probably that sometime mid-July for this class that's coming up. Of those individuals, there are 94 candidates that are still viable in the process. Of those 94 candidates, there are 16 city residents, 21 of them are female. There are 12 African Americans remaining in the group. There are 3 Asians, and then 8 identify as Hispanic, and 4 identify as Middle Eastern or South Asian. And that's what the class looks like. It's being vetted right now for our upcoming July class. I'm almost done here, Councilman Majoke. So next I'll go to recruiting efforts. So for the class that's coming up, we will have a class in July of 21, and then another class in the spring of 22 for FY22 budget. So that will hopefully we can get somewhere in that range of 25 to 35 per class if we're lucky. I will tell you just as a warning to that you know, the mayor and deputy mayor have given us the green light to hire for our full contingency at each class that we have, and we have never been able to fill the seats for the full contingency that we were given authorization for. So that continues to be a tough road. The next written exam is scheduled for May the 15th. There were 4 study sessions that are scheduled in the community. One of them we had to cancel yesterday, which was at Bethany's church due to the Derek Chauvin verdict coming out of Minneapolis. So we had issues that we had to divert personnel away from that. So we will reschedule that group. We also have a study session at the Northside Learning Center, at Pastor Jones's church, and then also with La Liga. Each of those will be 2 nights for that study session. CryTech, which was the Collaborative Reform Initiative and Technical Assistance Center, we're still waiting on the report back from that on-site visit that we had that will overhaul our entire recruiting efforts. Online, I do have an outline for you that we can send to you if you want to see all of the different avenues of which that we have advertised or the partnerships that we have used to get out our recruiting message. I won't go through that entire sheet because it's pretty extensive, but we can send you a copy of that. Right to Know. The Right to Know, we're in the process of ordering our next allotment of cards. They're about $8,000 a box for those. Also in this budget, we're scheduled to have our cultural competency for law enforcement as a part of our training. We did the research and picked out the cameras for the dashboard cameras. There were 50 cards that we got pricing for, which was for $737,000, and that is a 6-year contract. That is money that we will be asking for on a stimulus payment to be able to pay for the full cycle of that, what that contract includes. That is also to be true for the body-worn cameras, which you will see for this budget. That is really the only significant increase from last year's 21 budget versus 22 was the $440,000 that you see for body-worn cameras. That will be a total of 220 cameras that will be on the street, which is basically our uniform division. ShotSpotter, that's another topic that is you guys have been very passionate about. We have I believe a $43,000 payment that is due that will get us through June the 30th, and then we will start for the next budget cycle, which will be $230,000 annually for ShotSpotter. We're studying to see if we can afford to expand the footprint with ShotSpotter, but we're unsure right now if it's confirmed that we will be able to do so. Tasers, we've got worked on an agreement with Axon for the tasers for a 5-year contract. Again, we will be asking for stimulus to pay for the full contract of the tasers, which is a cost of $908,000 for 220 tasers. The decision-making software that we have is about a $50,000 cost to that. We'll be using that this year as a part of our in-service. And then lastly, on the Right to Know, our first report is due in July of this year for the second quarter. As you remember, because of our late start, that will be our first report for you guys. Cop cameras, 521 cop cameras. Also in the capital plan that we made our request was $350,000 per year to support the cops cameras infrastructure that is due to a 10-year shelf life of the cameras, so they continually need to be repaired and either replaced. Lastly, on our capital request, their vehicles, the radio system, phone system, and then of course I mentioned the cop cameras, and then a records management system. That is kind of an overview of what we have. Councilman Majoke, we're prepared for your questions.
Thank you, Chief. So councilors, let's start. Councilor Driscoll, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just had a couple of on page 177, there's one line that says persons contacted. And then it goes through the 3 years, 126, 250, 400. And then there's another line, 4 lines down, that says persons contacted, and it says 200. So we have one line that says persons contacted 400, one line that says persons contacted 200. So I was curious, one, how we get up to 400 and what the discrepancy is there between the two lines that seem to be similar but have different numbers on them.
Could someone on the team help me with that? I see the two lines that you're referencing, Councilman Driscoll. I don't know if it's intended to be a separate or if that's a duplicate or a misprint there. Is there someone on the team that can differentiate between the two lines?
Chief, I can't find that document. What are you looking at, Councilor?
Page 177 of our.
I'm looking in the budget book, page 177, line 2 from the bottom, and then about 5 from the bottom. They both say persons contacted, and there's different information.
Yeah, it says 400 in the 22, and then 200 for the second line.
I'll double check it, but I'm going to suspect there's a misprint in there somewhere.
All right.
Okay.
We'll follow up with you on that, Councilman Driscoll.
Hey, Chief,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go
ahead. McGort.
Just looking at this sheet, maybe this may ring a bell for Chief Schaaf, but it appears as though one line that says persons contacted deals with off-site visits. The other line appears to deal with persons contacted during college visits. And then there's also a line for students contacted for city school visits. So they appear to be persons contacted at different events. That's how I read it.
We'll verify that, Councilman Driscoll.
Thanks. My other question was, so regarding that, now thank you. Glad we have clarity on that. I just noticed a large jump between 2021 and 2022, going from 250 to 400, and how we hope to. I was happy to see that increase, and just wondering if anybody had any insight into how we plan to expand our outreach by that large margin. You know, contacting 150 more people over the previous year, being that, you know, the previous number was 250. It seems like a good sized jump, and how we propose to to do that outreach and contact more people. If anyone from the team had any insight into that.
Well, let me just give you're asking something that goes into the sheet that I said I was sending you a copy of, but we can go into it because it's been asked. So from an organization standpoint, NAACP, Linda Brown Robinson, Barbara San Petro of La Liga, Ty Shaw with New American Forum and Asian Community, Donna Moore with the Syracuse Northeast Community Center, Pastor Darren Hyman, People's AME Zion, Pastor Kenneth Reed, Greater Evangelical Church of God, Pastor Ricardo Draper of Tucker, and then Pastor Lateef Kenzie at Well of Hope. Those are kind of, from an organizational standpoint, people that we've asked to get out our message and to become community partners with us for recruiting. When we have had success with recruiting is when it becomes a community strategy rather than a police strategy. So when we put out, for example, here are some of the posted locations that agreed to post our flyers. Las Deliciosas restaurant on Westcott.
Is it the budget thing we're looking at?
You're not on mute.
Yes, Schaaf, you're on. Another Mom's Diner on Westcott, Franco's Pizzeria on East Genesee, Salt City Market, Ponchitos, Taquiera, on West Fayette and also on the New Court Street, a barbershop, Eclipse on Cherry Street, and then Fade's Barbershop. We've been on the radio, 96.5 The Beat, which is our hip hop station. And then we're running that from 9 until 9 a.m. till 11 and that was from March 16th through March 26th. We had Sergeant Malinowski do it on his Sunday show, to where we've been giving out the information about our police recruitment and hiring for that. We held virtual recruitment event careers. There was a virtual recruitment event on March the 12th, March the 18th, March the 22nd. We were at Fort Drum on March the 11th, March 17th, March 23rd. Lemoyne College on February 25th. SUNY Cortland, March 3rd. SUNY Oswego, March 10th. SUNY Brockport, March 10th. Morrisville, March 16th. SUNY Binghamton, March 18th. SUNY Albany, March 24th. Onondaga Community College, March 22nd. Syracuse University, March 25th. And SUNY John Jay, also on March 25th. And when you look at, and then the 4 testing sites that I gave you earlier, we have significant more energy, avenues and people that we're touching, and then having force multipliers with the people in our community that are helping us. So it comes as no surprise to me that we saw that increase. I think you will continue to see that number grow as we continue to get partners. As you all are well aware, I sent you all a text, majority of you that I communicate with frequently, asking you to send out the information. So we're asking any and everyone that can help us to help us with our recruitment efforts.
Great, thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. I'll yield my time, but before I do, I just say on page 178 as well, the numbers are the same for all 3 years for the whole page. Licenses renewed 19, 20, 21, tax inspection. So I think there's a misprint on page 178. I would be curious to get the accurate numbers, because it seems there's been a misprint and all the numbers are the same for all 3 years on page 178. But thank you. The news is very encouraging about making those community partners, Chief. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman,
Did you get that, Chief Shaw?
Yes, sir. Chief, like for the licenses, 19 and 20 are actual numbers, the rest of them are estimates. So it is based on the estimates on past practice, past what
Understood. Understood.
We don't expect a big change on those.
That happens fairly often on the activity indicators, because if they say, oh, we're on pace to meet the target this year, they put the same number, and then they say we're going to keep the target the same for next year, then it just looks like 3 of the exact same numbers.
Okay, thank you.
What time?
yeah, I have 2 questions for clarity for now. Chief, if I heard you correctly, you talked about restoring to pre-COVID numbers.
Yes, sir.
Going into 22, we remain flat, so there's no increases, no increase in overtime as well?
Overtime increase for the 21 versus 22.
Any
budget?
right, any
Yes,
projection?
sir. They both were 6.5 million.
If you could one more time, Chief, could you run down the demographic of that new class?
Oh, the new class? Yes, sir. These Councilman Bay, these are the candidates that are left in the process.
Understood.
They've not been hired yet.
Mhm.
So there's a total of 94 individuals that are currently being screened. 16 are city residents, 21 are female, 12 are African American, 3 are Asians, 8 identify as Hispanic, and then 4 identify as Middle Eastern or South Asian.
Chief, this is Sharon. Could you speak to your panel process you're implementing? Sorry. I didn't
Well,
realize
we've got the 5 individuals that will be a part of the community panel at the end of our hiring process. The final decision is made with the chiefs panel, which is myself, the assistant chiefs, the training commander, And then we also get information that will be from the individual background person that has kind of managed that person through the process. In addition to that, this year we're adding a community panel that will be before the chief's panel. And we've selected 5 individuals from across the city, diverse background, race and gender, and that we have to meet with them for the 5 individuals who've agreed to do it. We'll probably select a couple of alternates just in case that once we present to them, you know, the amount of time that they will have to put in to do this. In case someone cannot do that, we will pull in one of the alternates, but that will be a part of this next class that's coming up for July of this year.
I'm good for that, Councilor Majo.
All right. Any further questions?
Yes, I have some questions, Councilor Majoke.
Go ahead, Councilor White.
Thank you very much. So Chief Buckner, I'm wondering whether or not this current budget, if it reflects the expected agreement supposed to be coming out from the announced arbitration. And if it does, I'm also further want to know, will the new classes that you mentioned, new recruiting classes, will they be expected to comply with the expected residency requirements?
As far as our budget does not reflect the expected decision from an arbitration. That is in a line item in the special objectives of expense on the allowance of negotiations section of the city's budget. And as far as the individuals being required for the residency requirement, I don't believe that it would apply to this next class coming up, because that is not the conditions to which when they started the process that they agreed to. I believe the first class for that agreement would be the spring of 2022.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. But if I understand it correctly, this expected, or I mean, as far as the way the story read is that it's a done deal, is supposed to result in $4 million in budget savings. Do I understand that correct?
Well, first of all, I think you and I both know better than to believe everything we read. And let's wait and let the arbitrator do their job and see what they hand us back. And then we will kind of see what we're dealing with from that point. I do not have the exact numbers of that, because I don't know what the arbitrator is going to hand us back, nor do I think that the folks that are in the negotiation will probably slap me on the hand for saying too much publicly about what numbers have been presented for them to weigh in on.
So, Chief, I mean, I understand your point there, but did you not see the story that came out today on Syracuse.com about the deal that was reached between the administration and the police union concerning the upcoming arbitration?
I did read the article this morning, but I did not take it away from that article that there's an agreement that has been made official.
Understood, Chief. My next question is, you mentioned the right to know, and I'm wondering, and the next batch of cards are being ordered, and I'm wondering whether or not those next batch of cards are going to have the officer's full name on them, or whether or not you would going to require us to pass legislation to require that.
We maintain our current position that we believe that we have met the expectations and intent of the original language, the officer's last name, their duty assignment, their uniquely identifying employee number, as well as the information that's on the back if they would like to leave a complaint or a comment.
Thank you very much, Chief. My next question, Chief, is with the overall crime down, but violent crime being up, is there any way that the police department could allocate staffing away from more generalized patrols and to focus more on violent crime?
Please explain your question.
Well, Chief, I'm wondering if there's any savings to be had in reducing generalized patrols and focusing more on violent crime.
Well, when I heard you say generalized patrols, I understand that if I'm understanding you correctly, you're asking me, should I take more officers out of the black and white cars and uniforms that answer calls for service and put them in some sort of specialty capacity solely focused on violent crime? Am I understanding you correct, sir?
Yeah.
Well, I would understand to someone looking at that that is not in this profession. The best, I guess, analogy that I can give you is the reason that we have about 60-ish%, or we desire to have 67 or so percent of our folks in patrol, because that is the offensive defensive line of your police department. That is where rubber meets the road. And when the 200,000 calls that come into that communication center, that is the first point of contact with the public. If we're not adequate there, if we're not efficient there, no other place in the organization will it show more when your uniform division is not intact. That's the reason why I just had an hour and a half, almost 2 hour long meeting today with my chiefs. And it was a tense meeting because those chiefs are in there fighting for their bureaus to try to determine what transfers are we going to fill, because everyone has something that they want something that I don't have. I don't have more people. So then I have to prioritize the requests of those chiefs, and they will tell you that we've taken a universal stance, regardless of how painful it is to everyone in that room, that patrol is the meat and potatoes of our police department. It is the most visible piece of a public safety entity, and it certainly is important that we're adequate there. But I will tell you that from your point of where Chief McGorky is and the investigative folks, he probably walked out of that room the most frustrated because many of the things, when we went from 423 at our peak or so, or 430, now we're down to 375, that's 60 officer loss. When he loses people, he can only go to patrol to get his folks. The problem is the reason that I don't take people from Rich Trudell as frequently as I would from other places is because Rich only gets the uniform division. They get an officer after we've had them for 1 year. It takes me about 6 months to recruit them. It takes me 26 weeks to put them through an academy, and then I have to train them for 12 weeks. So the uniform division, it takes me a year to hand that division an officer, so I can't have my vacancies there because it takes me too long to fill them. So in turn, Chief Schaaf, Support Bureau, Chief McGork, Investigative Bureau, they get secondary, I guess you would say, resources off of the table because I have to keep the front line of the organization strong. To your point with violent crime being an issue, it is a point of emphasis with our gun violence suppression team. It is a point of emphasis with our narcotics folks and also with our gang violence individuals. So we are intimately aware of the issues that we're having as it relates to that. We're an intelligence-led police organization, and we allow the data to lead us as to where we need to go and who we need to be dealing with. But pulling people off of the front line of the police department would not be a wise decision.
Chief, can you just help? I mean, that was a very good explanation, and thank you very much for answering my question. But can you help me understand just a little bit more that if crime is down in a specific area, right? Is it your position then that the only reason that it's down is because of the show of force, so to speak, by having those frontline officers?
No, sir. I wouldn't say that because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to say that A plus B will always equal C. If I could tell you exactly what went into the cocktail that reduced crime for the week, for the first week of April in the Southeast Division, I would do that in all three of my divisions. But it's not that simple. There are many things that impact crime. It could be the weather has changed. The kids are out of school on spring break. The kids are back in school. We have a high number of vacant houses. We have an engaged neighborhood watch community. We had more officers that were working in that division on that particular day because we're separated by the three divisions. But it's not as easy as you look at crime and it's down, and you can be able to definitively determine as to what caused that crime to go up or down. And no one can definitively tell you that. Now, we can tell you things that we do that we believe that make us effective, but you're never going to see because we did A, we automatically get this outcome for that. It's just impossible to say.
Certainly understand. And just getting to the end here, Chief. Can you tell me how much money in this budget is being used to being put towards de-escalation training?
I don't know if we have a specific dollar figure for de-escalation training. De-escalation training is taught in a number of different blocks of our instruction throughout the training academy, as well as parts of our in-service. So I don't know if we can quantify how much is being used on de-escalation training. If you want to know for something along those lines, obviously we have the cultural competency for police officers coming up as a training block for our organization. And I believe the cost for that is $85,000 for the organization.
Great, thank you, Chief. And do you know how much money is being put towards crisis intervention or crisis management training?
I don't know, sir. I can get you the amount that it costs us to put on the school. We recently gained the ability to be able to conduct those classes ourselves. In the past, we had to wait on others to invite us to the party, and we could put 4 or 5 people in the class. I believe the number in this last class, I believe SPD had 15 people in the class. If one of the chiefs can correct me on that number or not, but we just put our own class on. But I will get the number as to how we quantify the cost of doing that, sir.
Okay, thank you
And
very
Council, I would add that Chief Cecil and I, and Chief Cecil, please chime in. We have been advocates because when for the individuals who are running the CIT program, I think I mentioned this when we were talking about the police reform plan, did not want to, it only could be focused on officers that had at least 5 years experience. We thought that was a tremendous waste of training and opportunity for individuals newly coming into the force. And Chief Cecil has been moving on engaging not only just existing officers, but those coming newly into the force.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Owens. And Chief, I just have one more question and then I'll leave you alone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just moving back to right to know for a second. Do you know when we can expect the full contingent of officers, at least that are going to have, civilian contact? So do you know when they'll be fully trained on the legislation?
I don't understand your question when you say we did our training on the right to know legislation. So we're fully implemented in the regards to what's expected of us, how we operationally perform. The outstanding parts that we have are the IT part of that, because right now we're manually having to do a lot of those things. We would like to be able to do that obviously electronically, but as far as our compliance with it, we're fully compliant today.
So Chief, did you finish writing the rules and regulations as it pertains to the different right to know pieces? Because in that legislation, you're directed to come up with rules and regulations to enforce to make sure that they're followed. So I'm just wondering, did you finish writing those?
I know that the temporary operating procedure was put out. Trudell, is the final policy, or if Rustin is on here, been put in place for the right to know?
Yeah, Chief McGork did that. The policy is out.
Okay. Yeah, would you like a copy of that, Councilman White?
Yes, certainly, Chief Buckner. I would like a copy of that. And, I guess when the policy is finalized, do officers receive any additional training on that aspect, right? Such that they will be apprised of what could cause them to receive potential discipline were they not to follow those rules and regulations?
Well, obviously, with us just doing the training, we wouldn't be doing retraining this early in the existence of this policy, but that is certainly something that, as a refresher, that we will consider for our continuing education in the form of in-service at the appropriate time to put those blocks of instruction in there if a refresher is needed.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Yep.
Counselor, I have a question. That's
okay. Yes, Councilor Green.
Okay. Chief, so just to follow up on one of Councilor White's questions. So the article today discussing the pending arbitration mentioned that the hearing is scheduled to be in May, and we expect a decision back pretty shortly. And it's a very expensive deal, but one of the main things the city's getting back is the 5-year residency requirement. So have we considered delaying the new class to take advantage of the main benefit of the agreement, which is 5-year residency for new?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have 375 police officers on the street, and despite how smooth we look on the surface, we are struggling like hell. Absolutely not. We will not delay that class.
So it just really does kind of have two arguments. One is that resume is so important, we need to spend millions of dollars on. On the other hand, it's not important enough to delay a new class by a month. I mean, do you see how that could be consistent?
Well, you would not be delaying it by a month because the regardless of when you delay it, the people that signed up for this process, that expectation was not in place. So if you can delay it for 3 months, the candidates that we have before us today, that was not the expectation that was placed upon them when they started this process. It would not be fair for me to walk in the room and tell people who have families, kids in schools, spouses working other places that we move the goalposts. That would not be fair. It's very important that we have residency requirement, which is why we work so hard to get the union to agree to do that. And we're going to do it, but we need to do it in a timely way and we need to do it in a fair way. To move the goalposts in the middle of this process would not be fair to these candidates. And let me remind you of something. That number that I gave you of the 102 folks that we have as candidates now, that number is down significantly. As the PBA president told you at his press conference earlier this week, you know, several years ago, I think he quoted 2015, 600 or so people or it was either 600 or 1,200 people. It's 50% less people that are putting in for these jobs. And Syracuse is a tough sell. We're a tough sell. We don't make the same as our counties and villages currently, which is why we're asking for this contract. Lot less work for less money, but a lot more work for less money is what we're trying to sell them to be able to get them to walk through the door. And to do this in the middle of that, no. Now, obviously, that the final decision is with the mayor. I would adamantly be opposed to it because it wouldn't be right to the people who have signed up.
Have we asked any of the applicants whether or not they would be willing to live in the city?
We asked many of the applicants would they be willing to live in the city during our last hiring process. We will ask those candidates when we have them for the Chiefs panel interview because we did it for our last class. And it was about, I would say maybe 80% or so said that they would consider it. The people who said that they wouldn't, the consistent reason was because of a family and a house kind of thing. But the majority said that they would if that condition was placed upon them. For the last class that graduated, we have not interviewed from a chief standpoint with this class as of yet. That will be happening sometime probably in June.
So, but for the current 102 prospects, we don't know how many of them would self-screen out if we put a requirement in for residency. We're just speculating on that.
Yes. Yes.
That's the only question I have. Thank you, Councilor.
Other councilors?
Thank you, Councilor Majok. I'll start you off as an easy one, Chief. What about Shot Spotter? I hear that's going to go online again Thursday or Friday.
I don't know the exact date. Joe, do you have the date? I know that we have the agreement with them, Councilman Hogan. Joe, do you know the exact date is scheduled to start?
Yep, it's going to be, it'll be reactivated tomorrow at noon.
Excellent. And Rich missed it. He had his sign up here earlier, so I'm disappointed that he missed that.
Well, that's why
Chief, first of all, I want
to.
Well, I like to deactivate him half the time, but don't. I'm only kidding. Chief, first of all, I'd like to thank you and the deputy chiefs that I deal with, particularly just Joe and Deputy Chief Trudell and all the captains and lieutenants that, you know, and I'm glad to hear that finally they'll be coming back to the TNT meetings and the neighborhood watch meetings because I imagine because of the money we're getting from the American Rescue. What I'm concerned about is when you say you have 375 officers, that's what you have sworn, but you probably have men on and women on leave with the service or sick or something. So what do you have like today? How many do you have on the roster today, would you say?
Well, the 375, it includes individuals who may be out injured or on sick, or they could be in a COVID separation detail. But the 375 is the individuals that we have on our roster.
Okay, because to tell you the truth, in order to properly police the streets, I don't care how much money you spend this summer, because I feel with only 370 officers or 350 officers, or how many you actually have on, it's going to be really tough. And I'm wondering how you're going to do it because I'm a little bit of a historian, and as COVID relaxes, hopefully, after the last pandemic, there was a decade called the Roaring '20s. I think people are going to be out, and I think there's going to be a lot of issues in the streets. So maybe if you can, are you ever contemplating a situation where you might have a minimum deployment where you might have to order guys in? Are you allowed to have protocol or anything?
There would have to be some kind of emergency declared before we ordered kind of an all hands on deck kind of situation. But that wouldn't be something that we would just do trying to manage the normal day-to-day challenges that we face.
So, I mean, when would you make that decision? Obviously, are you still on that? I know you used to use a paper trail basically for vacation time and personal time and all that. Has that been rectified? Are you all are you all using a computer system for that so you know exactly how many people are on vacation, how many people are on personal leave and all that?
No, sir. Much of that is still on paper.
So that's going to be, it's going to be really sort of a seat of your pants type thing as far as deployment every day, or how's that going to work?
I don't think that this organization does anything by the seat of our pants. That's evident by who we are as an organization. And if we were doing things by the seat of our pants under the challenging conditions that the city of Syracuse throws us, I can assure you, you wouldn't be sitting in the comfort and convenience of the home that you're sitting in right now.
Chief,
Well,
I can help out with that.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the home I sit in on Bryan Avenue, but I know what happens. We had a break-in just up the street from my house. And I know you guys are out running around all the time. And I'm just worrying, I'll be frank, I'm worrying about the deployment numbers you're going to have coming into the spring and the summer because you are down so much. So
to be quite honest with you, I'm worried about politics coming into touching into police operations where we're trying to do things because we think that they are politically sound good, but they have nothing to do with the effectiveness of an organization, like moving the goalposts in the middle of a recruitment process. Those are the kinds of things that will impact your police operations.
I was with the Parks Department for a long time, and I never met a lower goalpost, but I sort of get what you meant by that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I just wanted to relay that to you. I wanted to ask Director Rudd, how much money is set aside for the police contract, Director Rudd?
There's 3.18 million in the uniform allowance code that will pay for the expected new terms as of July 1, 2021 for the whole year.
On that, that's the set aside, correct?
That's the set aside for fiscal year 22. To the extent there's any retro payments, we're thinking that will occur in fiscal year 21.
And what would be the timeline? And I don't know who to actually ask, I'd ask this of, but when would that timeline of this overtime, accounting of overtime be streamlined and put online in a computer system that would be able to give everybody up-to-date figures?
I think, sir, go ahead.
I can give you a very quick update, Frank Kaliva, Chief Administrative Officer. We are behind in the what we call the Chronos, which is actually 4 different components implementation. The first of which is Telestaff, which is the scheduling and the time card implementation for SPD. We expect to be testing in acceptance testing late spring and online live shortly thereafter. So we won't make your summer concern, Councilor Hogan, but we'll be shortly thereafter. So probably midsummer up and live.
Okay. Well, okay. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Frank.
And Councilman Hogan, I don't know if you understand or not about the you asked about the call in. We do have minimum staffing numbers for each of our patrol shifts that if we are below that number, that we automatically give the supervisors and managers the authority to do overtime for individuals to come in to meet minimum staffing numbers, if that's what you were implying.
No, I was sort of familiar after, a bunch of years of working with police officers. I'm sort of familiar how it goes. And I know it puts a lot of stress on those officers that have to fill those deployment shifts. And, I was just wondering more or less if we had a better handle on who's off and who isn't off, through Cronus, as Frank says. I think it'll probably put less stress on the command officers that you have.
Yeah, and to your point, as far as who's working and the staffing that we have, the paper system doesn't really impact us in that regard. It does hurt us in being able to get you timely, accurate information from our overtime that's put into the system, payroll, those kinds of things. It does delay that kind of stuff. But as far as personnel staffing issues, those guys have their hands really wrapped around that.
Okay, so in other words, when a captain or a lieutenant in charge of a platoon at night knows exactly how many guys he's going to have coming in, but if a couple of those guys call in sick, he'll know immediately about it, or he'll know about who's on leave, who isn't on leave, and who's sick or whatever, right?
He knows what officers that he has at his disposal for the shift coming up. He should know that before that shift. And if we can look to see that we're going to have issues with that, we'll first put it out to the individuals who are working the preceding shift to see who wants to volunteer to stay over, or we may put out the email to get individuals to be able to come in. Or if it's something that's critical, we can have individuals for the shift that would be scheduled to be after that, if it were late watch, to bring in people from day work, maybe 4 hours early.
Okay. Well, like with only 350 guys, good luck and women, good luck this summer, sir.
Chief, the recruitment process for this class, when did that start?
The recruitment process for this started back probably near the end of last year. It takes us about 6 months or so to process someone through in the classes scheduled to start in July of this year. They will graduate in December of 2021, and the next class will be in the spring of 2022.
So the tentative agreement that we're talking about, though, just so we're all clear, was negotiated in November of 2019. So I just want to be clear when we're talking about moving the goalposts, is that this was in the news months before any one of these people started through the process. Is that right?
Sir, you can attempt to punt, kick, throw that ball back in my court. Here's my position. I have zero interest in having these candidates be required to have city residency with the current class that we're processing. Asking them if they would volunteer or would you have an issue with it, I have no problem with that. But to make it as a requirement on them, I have zero interest in that.
They're also going to be benefiting from the wage increases, part of the deal, right?
I'm sorry?
Can I jump in for one moment on this topic?
Sure.
These individuals that the chief is talking about took a civil service exam. On that civil service exam was nothing on it regarding residency. When they started the process to apply to be an officer in the Syracuse Police Department, they took an exam that lays out the qualifications. Syracuse residency, and you are talking to the queen of wanting residency in our police department, was not in that application at the time. And that's the point that I believe that you're trying to make, Chief Buckner.
If I could say something, Councilman Joke, real quick, and then
Please, go ahead.
Quiet. And this will be relative to this discussion, but it's also in reference to an argument that we've heard as of late across departments. I think it's unfair and maybe slightly impractical to compare pay between the city and the county when their budget is $1 billion more than ours. Let's be clear, 1.25 billion on average. So I think we have to consider scale when we're talking about the cost, what we pay people here versus what bigger governments with bigger budgets pay. It's not a fair argument. I want to respond to, I don't know if it's a gentleman or a gentle lady who asked the question about residency, JB. Residency is about finances, right? Discussion on residency has been discussed certainly the entire time I've been here, and I'm pretty sure it was discussed before I got here. So when you talk about the amount of income that was leaving the city prior to the fireman's agreement, and even still post the fireman's agreement, it's quite a bit. When you consider the taxable amount from that, it'll help our city out quite a bit in terms of closing our budget gaps annually. So it's a financial decision to talk about residency. I'm just stating that for the record for everybody. If you're not thinking finances, I'll always say I'll repeat what I always say. If it's not your intent to leave money in the taxpayer's pocket, you're in the wrong business. You should find something else to do, because that's what we're here for. I yield.
Councilor Green, are you all set? Give me a second, Councilor Hogan. Councilor Green, are you all set?
All set, Councilor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Hogan.
Maybe this is the deputy mayor. You know, we're talking about this residency issue quite a bit, and we've talked about it for years and years and years. And I agree. I agree. City employees should live inside the city of Syracuse, but we don't have any monitoring system at all, do we? Deputy mayor. I mean, we don't have anybody checks anybody residency, right?
I believe at one point I know that the corporation council wanted to actually put in her budget an individual that could be dedicated to this, and I'm not sure, Director Rudd, if that happened in this budget.
I believe
no, I don't believe so.
I mean, we used to have a former police officer who used to do it under the minor administration, and but the whole residency thing, unless, you know, everybody knows we don't monitor it. I mean, the only time you ever catch anybody living outside the city who's not supposed to live outside the city is when they declare the star exemption. So, I mean, this is sort of
or we monitor ourselves because we get calls from other staff that blow.
I know, and I hate to put anybody in a position like that, you know.
Right.
I know years ago there was a departmental monitor who would have to sign off on everybody, and they put that person in an awful position. I think they even got rid of that. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Councilor Hogan, we did not get rid of that, actually. We do still require self-certification on an annual basis, and we do follow up. We do not do any proactive investigations, but we do follow up on any complaints, whether those come from the counselor. We occasionally get them from the auditor's office, or have in the past gotten them from the auditor's office. We get them from citizens on a somewhat regular basis, and we do follow up on every one of those and require that the individual who's being investigated provide proof of residency beyond the self-certification. But we do not, to your point, proactively investigate any longer. That is correct.
Frank, you can tell you haven't been working for the city for a long time, but believe me, you know, this residency thing, I'm pro Syracuse, pro residency, but I know put the onus on some department person to sign off on another person, or self-certifying, that we all know how that'll go. So God bless you.
Any other questions, councilors? So
you missed my hand. Don't hang up on me. You missed my hand. I got a question. I'll take the monitoring job. I don't care about blowing people in. So give it to me. Okay. Let's go to page 187, please. And let's take a look at all of these civilian positions. And I'm just curious to know, are these part-time positions? Because the pay sure feels like part-time.
Just one thing on page 187 is the grand total headcount numbers didn't sum properly somehow. The numbers above it are correct, but like 101 doesn't accurately reflect the sum of what's above it. But sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, but back to the question, are these part-time positions?
No, ma'am, I do not believe that they're part-time positions. But I agree with you that our civilians should be paid more.
The temporary service ones, I think, are.
I'm not looking at temporary services. I'm looking at the auto crew leader that makes 22,000. I'm looking at a mechanic that makes up to 19,000. Those wages.
That's hours, President Hudson.
Oh, okay.
That's per hour.
All right. I'm asleep. I'm done. All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a brief additional question. Chief, you mentioned the PBA, the union's president's press conference. And in that, the president seemed to suggest that police reforms, specifically such as right to know, was hampering his ability for him and his officers to do his job and possibly hampering the ability to recruit new officers. Do you agree with his opinion?
Sir, I think that the right to know legislation was voted on and passed by the Common Council. We have it in place as a policy within the Syracuse Police Department. I do not think that it impacts us from doing our job. Do I think it's another administrative requirement on the officers that they would be less than enthusiastic about having something else required of them? Yes, that's probably true. But I certainly don't think that when you get down to us doing our job, that it impacts us from doing so.
And Chief, and what about the ability to recruit new officers? Is that a dissuading factor? Is police reform something that's going to make new people not wanting to get into policing?
I think that you probably would have to ask each individual person who's considering criminal justice as to whether or not police reform would impact them wanting to go into the profession. I will tell you that when you look at the relationship between an urban community versus suburban or towns and villages communities in the interaction between police and community, it's obviously different. I will tell you that for some of the people that have cited their reason for resigning and going to some of those departments, that's the kind of stuff has a lot to do with it, feeling like that there's kind of a toxic environment, which is why we have some of the things that we have in place that maybe some of those communities don't require. So I understand both sides of the coin, but to say that I certainly agree that yes, it is increasingly becoming more difficult to find people who are willing to do this job.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
But Chief, wouldn't you say that's across the country though?
Of course, of course.
Right, because we're sitting here acting like it's just Syracuse that's having such a hard time. I think across the country, people are not interested in being police officers. And I'm not going to blame the communities. It's two parties to blame here. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I agree with you. And I will just tell you that I believe that policing is the most difficult profession that we have in our nation. And I think that is multiplied in our urban environments.
Chief, you referenced earlier that you are on the way of ordering another load of cards for another $8,000. Is that a reordering, or is it a new to just supplement what was already ordered?
That's just basically getting another allotment in, Councilman Majoke, that we don't want to get to the point to where officers are having to hand someone a card with something written on it, we would prefer that they're not waiting if they run out, that we have those cards on reserve for those officers when they run out.
Okay. My second question is, part of, especially for me, usually so a little bit not comfortable with so much overtime, is that I believe that when you see officers putting in so much overtime, there's closeness to burnout, people working too much, and that in itself has many other effect in terms of health and everything else. So in speaking of that, Chief, and I understand that part of the reason why there is so much overtime is understaffing. Has there been any plan developed to move away or to somewhat reduce so much dependency on overtime?
Well, the conversation has been had and discussed about having a staffing study done independently of the organization to look at who we are, how we are aligned, what are our external challenges and expectations that we have, how we are aligned from an organization chart kind of standpoint, what the span of control is with our managers, supervisors, and then the individuals that actually do the work. All of that kind of information can be hashed out in a staffing study, which would more or less tell you if you have the number of officers that you probably should have based upon the challenges that you're facing. However, when you look at some of the variables that go into that number, most cities don't have a 30% poverty rate. Little Rock was a city where we had more violent crime than I've seen here in Syracuse, and their poverty rate was only 18%. So there are many things that Syracuse has that other cities may not have, and vice versa with some of these other cities, some in the plus area for Syracuse. But there are many things that you need to look at when you talk about staffing. Do I think that we can look at overtime and how we manage it and what we use it for, and to make sure that we have the accountability systems in place, that it's being adequately tracked, to what Mr. Hogan was alluding to earlier? I certainly think we have opportunity for improvement there. I think that Mr. Rudd will tell you that Councilman Rudd, who walked in the door probably thinking about our overtime in one frame of his mind, probably looks at it differently than he does today when he actually looks at what's expected of us. So we do a lot of things on overtime. Councilman Majoke, a lot of times, if we have something going on in one of your respective areas that was not part of our planned operational day, we will put out details for that. For example, which is why I can't pull people out for patrol when I have the fireworks detail, when we have the motorcycle details going on, when we send individuals up on the Erie Boulevard for those kinds of things, because in addition to doing all of these extra things that are very taxing to us, we always have to answer that radio. So we're never going to completely rid ourselves of overtime, but I certainly am not naive to think that we can't do a better job and continue to reduce it. Over the past couple of years, I think we've seen the reduction in how we're doing our overtime, but we still have room for improvement to your final point.
Okay, so when could we possibly see that employee and personnel study that could comprehensively look at how all of that works? When could we potentially see that?
Well, I would have to, send it to you all, obviously, to get permission to pay for it. Those studies are very expensive, and obviously, we could start the process to contract with someone to come in here and do it. I know several people across the country that do that kind of work, and so we can have it done. But then the other issue is once you have that study, then do you have the resources? What if they come in and tell us that based upon what we have, that we should have 500 police officers? Well, what we're doing today to get to 400. So once you produce information in that study, then we need to turn and say, okay, now that we have this, what are we going to do with this information?
And you're right, Chief. I think, and I'm coming from a position where I feel like it's better to know than not.
Yes.
Right. And being able to know exactly through this evaluation process, I think as a city, we'll put not just a city, as an organization, I think it will put us in a better position where we are able to adequately and intentionally and clearly place funding where they should go. See what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So I think we'll do a lot of good. We know, yes, then that is beneficial, and it allow us to make better informed decisions.
Yes, sir. We can, if that's the charge of the council. Obviously, I've worked directly for the mayor, and I know the mayor, and I've had multiple conversations about this topic, and the deputy mayor. But if that is the charge that you're giving us to have a study done, we certainly don't mind doing that.
Okay. I guess my third question, Chief, would be, so because we heard over and over that you are understaffed. What would be an ideal number for you that would put you at a level where you feel like you're operating efficiently for the community?
It's difficult to say from beyond what I've seen. I will tell you that, and when we had when we were at that mid to low 400s, I was not getting the kind of stress and anxiety that I'm getting from my commanders today who are struggling to keep the train on the track. But I will tell you, even at that 430, 440, whatever that number was, you know, Chief McGork will tell you that he had several vacancies when we were at that number. So even though we may have been operating more effectively and efficiently, that doesn't mean that we still didn't have a number of vacancies throughout the organization. So I will tell you, just first trying to get to that number in the mid 400s, and then we see how we feel at that number. We think that that's adequate. And then again, too, we need to continue to look inward to make sure that we are aligned in a way that we have to what Councilman White was asking earlier. Do we have the appropriate number of people in some of these specialty investigation areas in comparison to what we have in patrol, which is also would be a part of kind of that staffing study if we choose to go down that road. But that, as far as my comfort level since I've been here, sir, it was when we were at that mid 400 number that we had that I felt most comfortable, where I was not getting staffing concerns almost to me daily like I do now.
It's the mid 400 was the highest we ever got for this city, and I know population wise ours has decreased, because I think at some point we were around 200,000. Now we
Yes, sir. My understanding is, and Joe Cecil is our senior statesman on the staff. I believe that number is 500 and something, Joe, that the agency was years ago.
Yep, at the highest I've ever seen it is 521.
521. What was the population then?
It was 35 years ago, so I don't know. I don't know. I didn't keep track of that when I was a young cop. I would imagine it was 150, 160.
Counselor Majuk, that was during the Clinton years, and we got a ton of federal aid just to hire police officers. We put 60 on because of, and the money was just funneled to us to put police officers on. And once that money went away, so the spots went away.
I was a Clinton cop, so that would have been 92, 93, Councilman Majuk, when the Clinton money came out.
Okay, and Chief, that just continued to strengthen the argument that a study should be done. You know.
Yes, sir.
But Councilman Majuk, when I started 10 years ago, if you go back to being realistic, I think the numbers were 370 at that time, down from 412. So when you're talking, we've had a considerable drop since the time I've been on. And
Council President, this is Sharon again. If you remember, prior to us coming on board, we hadn't had a class in 3 years. If you remember that, right, Joe?
Correct.
Yep. And sir, I'll just tell you, you know, the mayor was very successful in hiring a class for each of his years, except for this the last year. And we were on track to closing that gap with our vacancies. Just the skipping the one class that we had to put off, it was you're seeing the impact of it today. So I can only imagine what these guys were going through when they missed 3 years of hiring. So, you know, there's something I would just press upon everyone in this room. I know that public safety, we ask for a lot of money. We're very costly on a city, but your city feels it when public safety is not in place.
True. Any other questions? Councilor White, are you all set? I see your hands up.
No, I'm okay. Just messing with my dog on my lap. Sorry.
Okay.
I had one more comment, Councilman Majuk.
Yes.
I know these are projections, Chief, but I don't know who on your staff. We have I'm always fascinated by the anomaly in the numbers. We have narcotic arrest charges for 2019 at around 1,200.
What page, sir?
Sorry, page 179. Third column down, first line, Special Investigations Division. Narcotic arrest charges in 2019 are over 1,200, 1,283. 2021, it's 200. And then 2022 projected at 500. So I was just curious that there's some dramatic swings there. And I know probably the 2022 number is just a projection, but I wonder why we would project less than half the narcotic arrests for 2022 than we would for 2019 for the year. I'd imagine the great drop from 1,200 to 200 would be because of COVID, if I'm not mistaken. Probably, yeah, probably contribute to that. But I wonder why we wouldn't predict a resurgence.
Police work.
What's that?
So let's hope it's good police work.
Indeed.
Chief McGuire, first of all, is that an accurate number, Derek?
Chief, I have to assume it is. The activity indicators went right directly to Lieutenant Lutz, I believe, from the captains. I would say just to Counselor Driscoll. So you're correct that a couple things affected our numbers last in this particular fiscal year. Certainly, we were impacted by COVID, and our operations were impacted that way. The other thing is we had two very, very long-term investigations that tied up, which have been publicized, that tied up the majority of the Special Investigations Division all of last year. There were two very long-term investigations which were hugely successful in the neighborhoods, but it's a huge resource draw. Literally every detective I had was assigned to that investigation, and those investigations ran 7 days a week. I would also say that over the years, the Special Investigations Division has gone from a staff of 53. We currently sit at 29 today, and that's because we added another unit into the Special Investigations Division. So we went from 53 down to roughly 19, or thereabouts. I don't have the numbers in front of me. So the amount of work that we can do is decreasing because our staffing is decreasing at such a rapid rate.
Gotcha. And do you feel that is compensated for? You said, departments were moved out. Is similar work going on in another area? It's just not under special investigations? Or do you feel there's just less attention to that and less resources going to that type of investigation?
So yes, I mean, due to staffing issues, we have fewer detectives. So the Investigations Bureau generally is down, I believe it's a little bit over 20% over the course of the past few years from a personnel perspective. So we do have to figure out how best to spend our resources now. So we have to focus our resources on, on the most important things as it relates to public safety. But the number of tasks and the number of investigations that we're able to perform today are fewer than they were just by virtue of the number of people we have working. That's all.
Thank you for that clarity. I do appreciate the work that you guys did on those long-term cases. That was very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Well, Chief Buckner and your team, I want to thank all of you for coming today and making this presentation. I want to appreciate all of you for the work you do. Thank you all to my colleagues and all our residents who came to listen to us today. Have a good day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.